Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory, and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, a cozy corner of the internet, where we play with narrative in some regard. In this case, we are quite literally going to create some narrative using solo tabletop RPG prompts. The game that we're playing tonight is called Nihilation. It's a little on the grim side, but I think we can still make something less grim of it. But I will explain the rules and all of that in a minute. Just a couple of things quick out of the gate. If you are here live, then you should join in our live chat where the little crop of potatoes is already conversing, and I see Witchery is here. It's great to see you again, Witchery. I'm glad that you made it this time. Tammy is here. It's also lovely to see you, Tammy, and Jumstore and Zombie Wolf and GS. It's all good to see you folks in here. GS says, it's raining where they are. Grim is great. It was raining earlier in the day for me, but it's not raining right now. What it is humid. Which, as you know, if you regularly watch this stream, my Norwegian blood does not like this humidity. I wasn't made for it. I was made for frozen ocean air. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get on to the game, because it's got a bit of a heftier rule set than normal. And I do want to explain it because I spent, honest to God, hours today trying to grasp it. It's probably not that complicated when I read it, not to scare you off, but like, just some stuff about it. It took me so many times to figure out what it was telling me. But let's talk about that in this section, which is called litgames. Litgames stands for literature games. It is the show. It's not just a part of the show, really. It's where we use a tabletop RPG of some sort, a solo tabletop RPG, a lyric game. There's like 15 other names for them, as prompts for writing. And a part of those prompts is the live chat. So if you want to join in the live chat, if you're watching live, you can give me ideas or things that you think should happen, and I'll try to work them in the best I can possibly do, rather. Although I did forget to mention, if you're not watching this live, you have the added benefit of skipping whatever you don't care about. You don't care about the rules, you just want to get to the writing, you can skip ahead to that. If you don't care about any of it, you just want to see the story we came up with, you can skip ahead to that. That's fine. Watch what you want to watch. But let's talk about this game, which has a rather cool cover, to be honest. It's simple, but it is quite cool. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the world, a little bit about the mechanics, and then we'll get to the writing. Probably take me, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. This game is called Nihilation. Not Annihilation, like the movie or the concept. It's a play on words, obviously. It's taking nihil there, which is also the root for nihilism, because it's about a bit more than just annihilating something like you might in a post-apocalyptic land where there's an atomic bomb. It's about the disappearance of all things into nothing. It's a game about entropy. You are in a world where doomsday has basically already occurred, and stuff is disappearing into a featureless void. And your job is to sort of move across the map, encountering monsters and encountering other people and encountering fragments of the old world and whatever else, and to try and remember some stuff. And if you remember enough stuff and figure out enough mysteries of this land, you can go on to what's called salvation. And it doesn't really define these things on purpose. In fact, the advice of the module or of the game is that you don't read past page 14. I have, because I kind of have to. I have to make sure I'm not getting us into something that's going to be really terrible to go through on this stream, but I can see their argument against it. In terms of its mechanical description, though, if you're a person who's in these games for the mechanics, it's a hex crawl that has some fighting. It has some stats. It uses 2d6 to resolve most things. There's a very unique damage system that took me the longest time to understand it. I'm still not entirely certain I understand. And it has a very unique health pool system for you that involves tearing up your character sheet. So let's get into that. Here we go. Let's read the world text here. I always like to read the color text that introduces the world. The world ended. Now the final end is upon us. Our memories will soon fade into nothing and be forgotten for eternity. But remembrance is still at hand, and with enough hope you can attain it. Do not despair, for that leads us all to oblivion. Your goal is to find and reach salvation. To do this, you will need to travel the baneful lands in search of clues to its whereabouts. You think that if you could remember how the world ended, you will know where to find it. The doom signs show you the way. Now, like most of these color texts, none of that means anything to anybody. Let's get into a little bit of this. Some of this I'm going to do as we go along because there is actually quite a bit here. But first things first, let's put our character sheet together. They have a nice character sheet that looks cool. And honestly, if you're playing this game on your own, it makes a lot of sense to print the character sheet out for how the game works on a tactile level. But because I'm all online here and I don't have second cameras and stuff, we're not going to be able to do that. So I made my own digital sheet of it, which is much less pretty. And you'll notice that this sheet has 3 stats: aggressive, thoughtful, and expressive. So, first part of the game that is worth explaining, I don't remember what one I'm on, there we are, is you have actions and you have approaches. And every time you do something, which is an action, you must also pick an approach. Now that's a really fancy way of saying it has 3 stats. Now the game itself, the creator and stuff, would probably bristle at me boiling it down that way. And I see why. It has more impact on role-playing than maybe normal stat choices do. But on a pure mechanical level, it is a lot like, Dex and whatever else, Dex and Strength and whatever, being your stats. Except in this case, your stats are aggressive, thoughtful, and expressive. And instead of being a description of you mechanically, it's an expression of your disposition. And not only that, you don't get to pick how your stats are put together for a pretty straightforward reason. This game, you don't know who you are. That's part of it. Zombie Wolf says we are thoughtfully, aggressively expressive. Indeed. So, I'll show you how we pick our stats in a minute, but you should understand these. Aggressiveness is what you think it is. It's being aggressive with something. Thoughtfulness is being cautious, but, losing time. It takes longer to do that. And expressiveness is being very personal and vulnerable with your emotions with these things. Okay, so aggressiveness, just to give it some of its text. Aggressiveness is traumatic for both aggressor and victim, but it can quickly remove obstacles from one's path, but at the cost of harming others, the world, and oneself. When using an aggressive approach, consider the collateral damage left in your wake, because it is ultimately a writing game. Thoughtfulness is contemplative, deliberate, and cautious, perhaps to a fault. It can enhance one's understanding and empathy, but at the cost of valuable time. When using a thoughtful approach, consider the insight gained as well as the time spent, because we are trying to solve some mysteries here, so that can be helpful. Expressiveness is deeply personal and emotionally charged. There is a vulnerability when expressing one's true self, but it can be strong enough to change hearts, minds, or even reality itself. When using an expressive approach, consider the risk to one's own psyche as well as the effect it has on others. Okay, so that's their description. Those are kind of our 3 stats. Here's how an action works. When you take an action, you have a set group of actions you can choose. They are explore, search, confront, oppose, which is like fighting something, evade, running away from something. Pass, delve, which is like going deeper into something or thinking about something more. Share, restore, and ask. Now, some of these are dependent on you knowing some things like keepsakes and whatever, but I'm trying to keep this as lean as possible. So I'm not going to be explaining everything. I'm going to try to explain the stuff that I know we're going to use. The reason why I did choose to play this game, though, is because I think the mechanics are pretty cool, if not a little complicated. But they're pretty cool at connecting you to this reality that they are, this very abstract and strange reality of a crumbling world. So when you pick an action, let's say you want to explore, you also pick an approach. And that approach determines, your buff. It'll be like a +2 if you choose to be aggressive or something. But, of course, being aggressive in your storytelling is going to have an effect on how success looks there. But I won't get too into that. We can interpret that later. Mechanically, the way the game works is you take 2d6 and you roll. And when you roll, you add any relevant stats. Zombie Wolf says, proper world building is seldom simple anyway, Rory. Indeed. And I don't think it always benefits so much for world building to be utterly complete. Like, I do think the reader plays a role in filling in gaps. So I rolled a 3 and a 5. That's an 8. Now let's assume I rolled it with an approach that I had a 0 in, because one of them will be a 0. So it's a +0. The way that successes work here is this little chart right here that I'm highlighting. Your action will cause something depending on the result. If it's a 2 to 6, when you roll the 2d6 plus your modifier, your action causes despair. Keep that in mind for a second, because it's not as abstract as it sounds. There's a mechanical description for this. The second, if you get a 7 to 9, which, presuming we were rolling on a stat with a +0 is what we rolled, we get gloom, which is, sort of the middle ground. And if we roll a 10 or above, we get hope, which is the best outcome, right? Now, what that means is when you picked an action, let's say explore the world that was in an attempt to discover new regions, we took our action, whatever approach we took, I don't know, a thoughtful one. If we took this action, we rolled an 8, there are 3 possible outcomes to that action based on what you rolled. If you rolled a 10 or above, what they call hope, then you locate and draw 2 regions on your map. You may move to one of those new regions. This is the map. It's a hex. And you can see that down in the corner here, I already have a character icon, my little var icon. And we're already on a sort of colored in, I'm using it as tokens here from the game, a little colored in area that defines what this hex looks like. But what they're saying there is if you did explore, you can Zombie Wolf says, well, I can't remember the last time I read a good story where the world building boiled down to the author saying guess to the audience. Yeah, I think you can. I think it depends on the context that you want to think about where it's inviting that gap filling. But by necessity, that happens. You can't describe an entire world in a book. You're only going to describe a story. So there's portions of that world you have to infer. But that's a part of the immersive element of being a reader. Anyways, the point here is if that succeeded, if we'd gotten hope 10 or above, 2 of these hexes could be filled in and then we could choose to move to one. So if we gotten gloom, then we can locate one region, but we can't move to it. And if you got despair, You don't find any region, you just find a foe and you have to fight. And that again, hope is 10 and above, gloom is 7 to 9, and despair is 2 to 6. You'll notice that there's no value for 2, because we are rolling 2d6. We'll never roll a 1. So that's how action works. You basically take an action, you pick an approach, and then you move around this hex map trying to find stuff. Now, there's a bunch of other elements that I'm all going to go through much briefer, but I kind of want that core mechanic there. Some of this world is a little more established. They have these areas that are described and whatever, but when we move, we roll d6s. I'm not going to go too into it right now because we'll do it together when it happens, but we roll d6s to determine the direction and the type of thing that we find. The type of location that we find, I should say. And there's a whole bunch of variations in there. You do not need them to know them ahead of time going into the game. You just need to know that you roll, I think it's 3d6s to figure out where you are or where you're going. There is an element in here of collecting memories and collecting, or restoring memories rather, and collecting keepsakes, which are also a way of trying to get memories, which is a sort of existential way of describing health pool, really. But here's the really interesting part of the mechanics, and we're at the tail end of my description here. This is what took me a while to figure out. Entropy is damage in this game. But of course, entropy is the word they use for damage in this game. And I couldn't figure out how you tracked entropy. When you fight monsters and stuff in this game, which if we find a monster, I'll show you how it works. Otherwise, we'll move on. They mention that, you can only go up to 6 entropy and to keep track of entropy and all that. And it took me a while to figure out where this was tracked and how that worked and whatever. And some of that is I missed a line of text, but even when I found it, it took me a while for my brain to grasp it. But here's how it works. The sheet itself, I'll show you the original sheet. Mine is representative of it, but I'll show you the original character sheet. The sheet itself has a slot for aggressiveness, thoughtfulness, expressiveness, and then it has memory 1. You can probably barely see that it says that, but it's sort of faded along the side there. Memory 1, memory 2, memory 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then it also has behavior, mannerisms, physique, skin, face, and hair, which is something we all roll because, again, you don't remember who you are. And then a marker in the middle here for keepsakes that sort of store memories and are a way of winning the game. But you'll notice that it also has these black bars that say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the way that works is when you take damage, 1 entropy, you physically tear off the bottom of your character sheet. You tear 1. Crumple it up, throw it away. It's lost to the void. As you move up, 2, 3, and so on, 4, it has other mechanical effects and whatnot, but I'm not too fixated on that. Entropy is causing you basically to literally lose your memories off this sheet. You tear along 2 and you crumple it up and throw it away. You tear along 3, you crumple it up and throw it away. And that's why when you reach 6, because you notice it goes up to 5, that would be at the point where you lost your actual stats and you die. Now, when you die in this game, which is the assumed outcome of most of your characters, instead of that's the end of the game, you just roll a new character, the hex map stays the same with all the stuff you discovered, and you go through an entropy event, which adds something to the map. You bring your new character into this world that's been somewhat discovered by the last character, and you carry on. The catch is, every time you go and end up burning away a character with entropy, you mark off your deaths on the side here. And that becomes a modifier for entropy events. You roll for the entropy events. As you add on with your rolls, that eventually gets you to a point where the entropy events get so bad you cannot recover from them. So instead of a character death being the end, enough character deaths means the end. And I think that's cool, especially for a game that's about fighting the void. And as GS says there, what a tangible way to portray memory loss. I agree. For as much as I whined at the beginning about how this was a complicated thing to get used to, and it took me a while to learn the rules and all that, my overall assessment of the game is that it's a really clever way of embodying its themes and mechanics. Now, the last thing I'll mention is what our goal as a game here to find is 4 doom signs. Doom signs will eventually, Jumpstore says everybody knows if you die in the game, you die in real life. Yeah. Oh, what? I mean, that joke's been made a lot of times, but I'm trying to remember what. Obviously, they say it about the Matrix. But is there another predating that movie where that gets dropped? I can't remember. Anyways, we're trying to find the doom signs, which, because the game is random, will be randomly situated. But when we find the doom signs, if we find all 4, what we can do is draw a line between them. And where they cross is where we find salvation. So that's our goal. So tying all of this together, it is a 2d6 hex crawl game where you can fight monsters, you can meet other people, you are fighting against the decay of the world. You probably will die doing it, but that's okay because what you discovered will be really discovered by the next character. And you're just trying to find enough information to move on through to salvation and preserve the memories of humanity. GS says it's pre-Matrix. I feel like it is pre-Matrix, but I can't remember what. Like, I know I've heard it. It's like for a long time, I knew where the term, where that line, game over man, came from. Or I knew I'd heard that before, but I could not for the life of me remember for like a few years where I'd heard it. Like I could picture the guy sweaty and saying it. I couldn't think of it. And then I remembered later it was aliens. Anyways, that's the game. As with most games, you'll probably pick most of it up as we learn. So let's make our character sheet and at least get some hexes moved. I'm going to try and write a little less for this one, mainly because I think the theme of nihilism is not served by a lot of wordiness. He says, knowing who he is and how he's probably not going to do that, but I'll try. Which means we got to go back to the top. Okay, first of all, we have to determine our stats. Now, why don't you get to decide your stats? Jumpstore says, was it Tron? Oh, you're right. It was, wasn't it? The movie where he gets transferred into a video game. Yeah. I feel like that you are correct. I'm not overly confident in that, but I think you're right. Tammy says, oh, come on, zombie. With all your wisdom, you should know where that saying comes from. That's true. I'll leave you Googlers to Google it. So the reason why you don't get to decide your own stats is because you are one of the nameless. This is after Doomsday. The last remnants of the world are fading away, and one of the things that has happened is most of humanity has forgotten most about itself, including themselves, which means, and this is very crucial for the game, your character, our character, cannot have a name. They have no name. So, they also don't get to choose your stats because you're basically sort of like an amnesiac becoming aware of who you are in the moment. There's a version of, a way you can play D&D that works like this, by the way, where you have like scratch sheets Oxventure, if you guys have ever looked at them on YouTube. Oxventure did a version of it, but they're not the ones who invented it. They're just a good summary of it. Anyways, which means I need to roll 3d6. One at a time. And the highest result will give a +2. The lowest result stays a 0. And the middle result's a +1. So the first one is for aggressive. It's this bright green one. It's a 5 in aggressive. But we don't know what that means yet, because it's going to be relative. The second one is for thoughtful. It's this metal dice. That's a 4. And the last one is also a green. All my dice are kind of shades of green. It's also a 4. I imagine if it's a tie, I'll have to re-roll. It doesn't say, but I know it can't be a tie. Okay, that's a 3. So it's a 5, 4, 3. Which means aggressive will be a +2, thoughtful will be a +1, and expressive will be a 0. So I'm going to put that into our character sheet. That means when we roll our 2d6, if we choose the approach of aggressive, we will add a +2 to it. GS says, Google says 2006 stay alive. Oh, it can't be 2006. Zombie Wolf says, do we not have a name so we, the player, won't get attached? Or do we not have a name because in a dystopia, why would such a thing be relevant to have? There's another reason for it, but to do so would be to spoil the game. It's one of the reasons why the game advises you not to read past page 14 when you're playing until you start playing. And it's not something we're going to get to. So if you guys want to know the actual answer to that, you will have to buy and play it. That I don't get any kickbacks on that. That's just, I just don't want to ruin their design. It is on sale right now. I think it's like $2 right now. So if you guys are interested in the game at all, you should definitely check it out. Indie games like this, they need your help. Now, I didn't write in memories for my character because I didn't quite understand when that happened in the book, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, GS, we can't remember our name. Is the key thing. Now, we also are going to roll our traits. And also, I think it kind of has to be this way because your character is going to change a lot. And our traits are all, again, rolled as D6s. Now, I don't understand why they call this a D36 chart. Maybe that's an acceptable nomenclature for what they do here. But this took me longer than I care to admit to figure out. What you do is there are 6 rows of words per category with 6 words in each row. You roll 2d6, for example, for behavior. It's rolled 1 dice first. It's a 2, which means we look at this list. This would be 1. This would be list 2. Then I roll again. And I rolled a 1. And I look at this list of 6 in the middle here, where it says rude, driven, stoic, hot-headed, grumpy, heartless. We rolled a 1, which means rude. We are rude. Our behavior is rude. I don't understand how that translates to a D36, or maybe I'm misreading that, but... Witchery, I'm inclined to agree. I don't know why they couldn't be numbered. I think it's a cool concept, but it was a little hard for me to figure this out, partially because of the formatting. It's not the end of the world. It did take me a while to figure this out. For our skin, it's a 6, which means it'll be the last row. Good point, GS. 6 by 6 is what they're trying to say. Because that would 6 times 6 is 36. That makes sense. And a 5, so clammy. Our skin is clammy. Our physique is Oh, I put that in mannerism by accident. Oh, I see how they did it. Okay. Our mannerisms then. It's a 3, so it's this one. And a 3. Flowery speech. I don't love that. I'm going to reroll. One is overly casual. I mean, I prefer that to flowery speech. Not that I have a problem with flowery speech, I just feel like it's not the character I envisioned here. I realize that's kind of the game, is like you don't get to entirely choose who you are, but gotta pick what I can write. GS says rude and clammy. Gee, we're attractive. I don't know if the void sucking the rest of humanity and all its memories away is a good time to be picking people up. Maybe that's the best time. I don't know. If you were staring at the sucking void that was releasing anti-monsters of tendrils of brain-sucking power, would that be the time to start flirting in your book? Because I don't know. I don't think I'd be into it. Physique. It's a 2. So this row. And a 6 is short. I feel like short is not quite a description of physique, but that's okay. Our face. Good one, Zombie Wolf. Our face 2, so it'll be in this one. And a 4. Sunken. I don't think we saw that coming. Sunken face. Oh boy. All right. Finally, our hair. It's a 1. And a 3, which is bristly. It's a bit of a weird descriptor for human hair, but okay. I mean, it's not unheard of. It's just usually more of an animal hair description. Jess says this is like battleship coordinates, and then Witchery says, yeah, I don't think we're getting none in terms of the flirting thing. So we are a rude, overly casual, short, clammy, sunken face, bristly haired. I mean, I think we all agree, man, at that point. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it does feel that way. We are definitely getting more and more attractive. Okay. So that's who we are in our sheet. And you'll notice that the breaks in the sheet from the entropy means at some point we'll start to forget those aspects of ourselves. Yeah. Okay. I think memories are things that we gain through play. I hope I'm right about that. It was the one thing I couldn't figure out. It does make sense to me that your first memory is the highest up, so it's the least likely to be lost. You do need memories for some things to win the game, so we'll see how it goes. Zombie Wolf says I called it. Okay. Now, let's take an action. I think we really only have one available to us at the start here, and I think that is we basically have to explore. Because to search, you need to have an explored region, which we haven't explored yet. And the rest of the actions are mostly responses or require items we don't have. So explore is the only action. Whoops. So the question becomes, do we want to explore aggressively thoughtfully or expressively. I think this system works better with the other actions, I will say, like choosing how to confront a foe. It really affects that. Choosing how to interact with people about memories. But I am curious. Chat, how do we want to explore? Also, while I take this moment and let chat catch up and take my tea out, I'll mention that I have not abandoned our project with the delve that we created a few weeks ago, the Cthulhu delve. But this, it's largely done actually, but this project, reading this book reminded me of my own anxiety about it. I mentioned that after that stream, I had created a bunch of additional mechanics for that dungeon. Nothing too groundbreaking, but stuff that I thought would be fun. But then I was like, okay, well, I got to describe them. And tutorializing mechanics effectively is really hard. It's really hard. As much as I gave this game a bit of a hard time that I didn't always understand what it was asking of me, I don't want to undercut the fact that that's the hardest part of this, is trying to tutorialize a player with just simple text. And that, above all else, is what's held me back from putting it up on my itch.io page. Aggressive would definitely be in character for this person. Yes, GS makes the point because they're rude. Jumpstore also says, based on a character's description, I think aggressive makes the most sense. I read this in reverse order. Witchery says, people who are clammy are usually sick or nervous. Well, that still makes sense for rude and aggressive. Like, I'm not saying like you have to feel bad for people or whatever, but just as a purely psychological insight, the number one reason why people get into road rage incidents, for example, is, well, I mean, this is a hard thing to prove, but it seems likely that a lot of people who are prone to road rage are people with anxiety problems, in particular, undiagnosed and unmanaged ones, because anxiety has a tendency to manifest as anger. So that makes sense. He's a nervous guy, and he covers it up with a lot of aggression. All right. Time to tap into my best... I feel like the vibe here is kind of the road in that very short, terse sentence style, but I don't know if I can do that. We'll see how I do. This is a weird one to start because normally you sort of zoom out from the character. You start establishing some details about the character and you zoom out, but the whole point of this is the character themselves doesn't know themselves. This is not the first time I've written like this, though. I did write a story once. Content warning. A self-harm reference coming in the story. The premise of the story. It'll only take me like 10 seconds to describe those, so skip ahead if you want. But anyways, in the concept of the story, the person took a drug overdose to kill themselves. But the side effect of the drug is that at that high of a dose is that they cannot remember anything prior to the moment they took the drug. And then the story sort of follows them around town, and I didn't end up finishing it because structurally it just fell apart, but I'd say the most fun part of that was trying to describe a person discovering themselves in real time. I don't really want to do that here. I want to keep this a little more hands-off and distant, the way that the road does, sort of. But it reminded me of it. Well, we may as well start with the feature we all did. My hands are sweating. Sticky to my own touch. It's not warm. The sun. Do I want to go first person? Not if it's a story where people die a lot. I could do that. It's very conceptual. First person, they die, and then the next first person comes along, but maybe not. Zombie Wolf says, that sounds like an interesting story. Maybe they'll work on it again and finish it one day. Maybe. I mean, there's kind of two phases to a story. Like, I would say I come up with like 5 ideas like that a month. But the real test is you sit down and you try to draft it, and that's where you discover if you have a story. Tammy says, hi, my phone froze up. I just got back on, thank God. Only missed a minute or two. Sorry, all. That's okay. It's not like this is a tight action story that has a lot of detail. But yeah, anyways, what happened basically was the premise was cool, but a premise isn't a story. It's just potential to be one. And when I wrote it out, I tried a couple of different approaches, and there just wasn't really any story to it. There just wasn't really a story I could find there. So if I have some other additional spin or thought on it, maybe I could make something of it. But yeah, I mean, it was a meditation on the idea of like, how much of a role does memory play in a decision like that? His hands are sweating, sticky to his own sticking. It's not warm. The sun is a stretched stream spiraling into the black void that now fills the sky. If anything, well, it's cold and getting colder. The world erodes before him. He is confused. He knows his life predates his memory, but none of it can be imagined. Kevin CR. Hello, Kevin CR. I don't know if I've seen you in the chat before. If I have, I'm sorry I forgot, but if I haven't, thanks for giving it a shot. It says, wonderfully horrifying. Oh, good. He's confused. He knows his life predates his memory, but none of it comes to his thoughts. He pushes up to his feet and looks around. Okay, so we start on the shadow step. We are required to start on the shadow step. So the shadow step is an area, a type of area. A flat emptiness marked by... I haven't actually read any of these yet. A flat emptiness marked by occasional riverbed, plateau, or shallow crater. Huge shadows are cast down from unseen megaliths across the land like dark fingers. Strange creeping vegetation grows in the cracks and craters where small critters scurry and hide. We then roll 2d6, this time to identify stuff. And I think we do it 3 times. I think. Again, double check the rules for yourself. Don't trust me. So the first is a 7, which is a theme of identity. Well, that's handy because we're at the beginning of the story where we don't know who we are. So that worked out well. Just making notes for myself here. The next one is the event of this area. It's 5. Begging. Hard to say what that means. Begging. Obviously, it is intentionally vague because they're prompts, right? You're meant to interpret these. The last one is more concrete. This has mechanical implications depending on what we land on, and that is the discovery of this area, which again is done by rolling 2d6. It is 5 and 2, which is a 7, which is a settlement. Now that, if I was just watching this stream, I would think this was arranged. And I'll explain why in a minute. But it's not. I don't fix these games because I don't need to. It doesn't matter that much. But a settlement on a shadow step triggers a special thing. It says down here, a doom sign will appear if a shadow step region is occupied by a settlement, which ours is. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our map. We're on the shadow step right now. I'm going to pull... I made tokens of all those images in the book to make this easier. You are supposed to draw on the hex. But for those who've been with the stream for a while know that my old laptop cooked itself months ago. And I had to pull out my 2012 laptop, which cannot run my drawing program at the same time as streaming. So we have to use Roll20 here. But an icon is what goes on. Let's go to the map layer. Settlement. All right, let's go back to the token layer. Which also, I think, means, I don't know if it's a special symbol for it. Maybe I forgot to put it in. I do think there's a doom sign symbol, but we get a doom sign, which is one of the goals that we're trying to get. So there's a settlement. Chat, feel free to think about what is the nature of these settlers. So a couple of rules about it. They are also nameless. They don't remember their names. Settlers are people who are sort of living in this decaying world post-apocalypse. They understand that doomsday has come and gone and the world is leaving, but they're not maybe so ambitious about it. That's more interpretive. But they don't have a name and they live in a small group, and they do remember some aspects of humanity a bit. And we can interact with settlements to get a collective memory back. Okay, a doom sign will appear, but I don't think it's on the shadow step region. I think we have to roll the coordinates here. Let me double check that. Again, I apologize. I certainly did try to prep for this. It's a hard game to keep in your head sometimes. Alright, to find salvation, you must remember how the world ended. All you can remember is that there were signs that foreshadowed the doomsday is coming. Remember, these doom signs will give you clues to salvation's location. Whenever you move, check the prerequisites on the terrain to see if a doom sign appears. When one does, roll the indicated words of inspiration table, we'll do that in a minute, and interpret the results. You can delve, which is an action, into a doom sign in an attempt to learn a coordinate. Okay, if successful, doom signs will no longer appear on that terrain type. Oh, okay, yep. Again, it's a tough thing to remember, but I do understand it. Once you have 4 coordinates, draw lines between them in the regions where these lines intersect is where salvation can be found. If these lines do not intersect, the central coordinate is where salvation can be found. Don't know what that would look like. Okay. So first and foremost, we don't quite know where the doom sign is, but we do know what it looks like, however that works. We need to go to these pages, and we need to roll based on what the nature of the doom sign is on this particular property, which is right here, feeling for shadow step. It's feeling plus environment plus thing. So I'm going to put that because I'm going to forget. Those are each a rolling table at the beginning. They call them D36 words of inspiration, but it was feeling, environment, and thing. Feeling is right here. Let's roll our 2d6. It is a 2 and a 4. 2 and a 4. So that is this table, 4 down. 2, 3, 4. Afraid. It's a feeling of afraid. Plus an environmental roll. Same idea. It's a 5 and a 3. 5 is this table. 1, 2, 3 is eclipse. Okay, so it's an eclipse we're afraid of. A fearful eclipse. And a thing. Which is... Where's the thing table? Or do we just choose a thing? Oh, thing is here. Yeah. I don't think you have to use the rolling charts if you want to pick your own signs, by the way. I mean, you don't have to do anything in a solo tabletop RPG. 1 and 5. Thing is... So 1 is here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Toy. Oof. I don't know what to make of that. Okay, chat. I know. That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of rules for a chat that's mostly here to make my writing hard. We have a doom sign that involves being afraid, an eclipse, and a toy. What does that look like? That's a tough one. I'm going to give you guys a minute, and I'm going to look at what we have for the action of delve, because in order to find the location, I have to delve. Delve into the memory of a region in an attempt to learn a doom sign. Action plus approach or keepsakes. We don't have any keepsakes yet. Upon rolling hope, which is again 10 and above, you gain a doom sign. Well, we gain the location to a doom sign. Upon gloom, you gain a doom sign but increase entropy. Upon despair, you must evade. Well, now I'm a little confused by that. Let me check something. When one does appear, roll on the indicator where to interpret the results. You can delve into a doom sign in an attempt to learn a coordinate. If successful, doom signs will no longer appear on that terrain type. But what counts as success when you have 3? GS says toy, quite the mystery. Toy could be a spaceship, something to do with the eclipse, a toy telescope. Help me out here, guys. Yeah, come on, chat. Yeah, I don't know if I mechanically understand that. What success looks like when there is a 3 condition. Anyways, I haven't rolled that yet. Let's figure out what this looks like. So, I've already established the sun is being sucked into a black hole across the sky. So what does an eclipse have to do with that? I mean, obviously we can have a toy in a weird situation because it's a sign of doom. GS says, I like the telescope idea. Okay. A telescope. Okay, I think I might have something. There's a settlement here too. So I'll write a couple of quick paragraphs. He feels sluggish. His steps are short because his legs are short. His hair bounces in his face. He shivers from the winds off the black slate valley. Below the ledge. He is shuffling along. That's a good point, GS. He can see canvas, or maybe some old, no, too many words. He can see canvas strung between crumbling breeze block walls at the floor of this crater. Kevin CR says, I need to see that in a sci-fi big screen feature. Interstellar 2, oh, a sun being sucked in? I agree. That'd be quite the visual. GS says, are they Santa's workshop? Yeah, indeed. At the floor of this crater. Identity and bagging. Okay. I don't know if I can work identity and bagging in. That might be too many prompts for a doom sign. I'm going to focus on the doom sign. You can see canvas strung between crumbling breeze balls at the floor of this crater. A spire draws him forward, though, and away from the settlement below. It is the remnants of a foundation still proud. From the shale, from the shattered shale. Canyon slope. Atop this natural dais is a simple children's telescope, untouched by the sharp dust of the wind or the dew that collects in the dark moments. Oh, good point, GS. We could have him do that in a moment. GS is recommending that the begging is because our character would probably rudely go and beg for something. For the rest of chat, if the Doom sign ain't your vibe, because I think I've got a good idea going here from GS's wonderful recommendations, and what do you think we should do with the settlement? Atop this natural dais is a simple children's telescope, untouched by the sharp dust of the wind or the dew that collects in the dark moments when a planet passes the feathering remains of our sun before crumbling into the event horizon. He crawls up to it and looks through. Jumpstore wants to go full violent. I don't think this game lets us fight other humans, but that is a funny recommendation. I'm trying to think of a way that the system could make that work, and I can't think of any system that makes that work. They have a rather complicated system for damage and attacks that requires those to be somewhat pre-built. But I can certainly be rude. There's nothing that stops me from doing that, and just in RP terms, trying to be tough. He crawls up to it and looks through. In it, he sees the starless sky, but not the sky above. Yeah, I think we could definitely like oppose. There's still a thing we could roll for that, but I guess you could. Yeah, now that I think about it, because an oppose roll is just you fight and you succeed or not. If you're fighting a foe, that might work. And I guess at the end of the day, even if I want to, I can just roll 2d6 and make up my own consequences, really. He turns it towards the sun, but even then, there is little light in the telescope. He checks the end of it for a cap, but it is uncapped and the lens clear. He moves its view from the sky to the land, searching a colorless void with this children's toy. Let's delve. Let's see if we succeed. I'm gonna say that success counts with gloom, and that really only despair, because yeah, I think that's got to be it. What's our approach for delving? So delving is like thinking deeply on this sign. This telescope is our one part of our gloom sign. This children's toy, or doom sign, or whatever it is. But we have to pick a stat. So we have aggressive, thoughtful, and expressive. I'm going to say aggressive doesn't make any sense here, so we're not going to use aggressive. But between thoughtful and expressive, do you think our character is going to take time to think about what they're seeing and that will determine their success or not? Or whether they're going to be more emotionally open about it, which is what they're terrible at, and try to sort of feel their way to the right thing, I guess. GS says settlement is a mountain people, maybe like Tibetan or Arctic people, because they can survive the cold. Oh, that's a good point. Jumpstore says, yeah, it says basically we could steal from them. I think that's probably what we'll have to do for this character. If it was me playing like an RPG of a character I chose, I probably wouldn't do that, but this is a rude, clammy, sunken-faced person. Thoughtful, GS says. Okay. So I rolled a 3 and a 2. So for a 5, this one is a 6. This might be a failure. I'm trying to remember. That is a failure. Upon despair, you must evade. Okay, so we have to use evade an impending danger in order to survive. So we tried to delve into knowledge. We're going to run into some danger. Oh, I see. And Zombie Wolf and Jumpstore came in. Expressive was the vote. The result would have been the same. If you feel any better, we can switch it to expressive. There's no way a character like ours is thoughtful, Zombie Wolf says. That's a good point. And Jumpstore says expressive. I say our character was set up to fail. That's probably true. Yeah, GS, I had an idea of how the telescope could help us, but we did not succeed, so it doesn't matter. So now we have to evade, which means I gotta roll again. It's another 3 and a 2. I think for evade, we were probably aggressive. I know I have to pick this ahead of time. But I think aggressive, which means we will increase our entropy by 1, which the way I'm doing this on the digital sheet, I'm going to do this. It's a little trickier on Google. I had this open earlier. Well, where is it? Table. How the hell do you edit a table in this? I did this earlier. Is it just because it's shrunk down? Well, I want to turn this black. I don't know how to do that. Can I do it with this? Nope. Yeah, you know what? That'll work. Just the black markers. GS says, Zombie Wolf and Jumpstore are correct. I'm giving Sunken Face way too much credit. Yeah. Okay, then Sunken Face. I like that. That's what we're calling him. He was sure this strange artifact must mean something. He could not figure out what, though he grew impatient with even brief consideration. He decides to spin it, leaving it to luck on where it lands. With a strike, it spins, but with it, the world shifts and the ground shatters more. A river of black negation bubbles up from a fissure and screams. A choir of terror. He falls from the proud rock and grips the telescope like a club, swinging back against the oozing void. Still, something of himself feels lost in the encounter. He runs for the settlement. GS says, you have a hard job, Rory, trying to write a story with these odd prompts. Yes and no. I would say that this is more in my wheelhouse than some of the other stuff I write. Like, I feel like one of the harder things I had to contend with was the one we did that I had likened to like Scooby-Doo anime. And it's nothing to do with the game, it's just it wasn't really a genre I'd read a lot. Fever Dreams were like my favorite thing to write. I remember like in my early 20s I had some really convoluted stories. I had some terrible things that I was really high on myself about in my 20s. But I remember I had this one where like the opening of every chapter was a sort of dream that took usually elements of biblical stories and then sort of inverted them like a bit, and they were more like dolly paintings and writing. And I really enjoyed doing that because they were very strange and symbolic, but it was garbage to read, frankly. You know, like the prose, I think I've been good at prose most of my life, but good prose can cover some really flaccid ideas. And at the end of the day, as they say, if you haven't heard it, people pay for stories, not prose. He runs for the settlement at the base of the crater. They are a gray and frail people. They stare up at the dimming sky, caring only enough. Jumpstore says, I'll never forget the Lovecraftian Christmas story where our beloved Abomination was tasked to substitute for Santa. It's still my favorite game we did. I love to hear that. I did enjoy writing that story. That was fun. It was a good cross section because I really do like comedy. I wouldn't say I'm a great comedy writer, but I really do like a lot of alt comedy. And I grew up, you know, like when I was like 8, I was watching Monty Python, and when I was like 14, I was watching Mr. Show, and you know, stuff like that. Crossing it with the sort of inconceivable horrors of Lovecraft was comedy, and Lovecraft was a surprisingly good mix. I agree. I had a lot of fun with that. GS says, are they all ages? Well, for what's about to happen, maybe they shouldn't be. They stare up at the dimming sky, caring only enough to say a polite hello to this sweating man carrying an impromptu. See, we're already getting poetic. Bludgeon. What can I say? I don't have the steely, terse prose that this genre probably benefits from. They have a crate of food. It's old grains and some sort of dried vegetable. Something of the old world they uncovered. He tells them to give it to him. They do not. They pull the crate closer to their circle of sky watchers. GS says jerky. True. Probably would be jerky, wouldn't it? He tells them they should run for a river of erasing tar is flowing down towards them. A truth told only for his benefit. They nod and say a polite thank you, but keep their food stores tight. In a tight grip. He strikes them with the remnants of the strange telescope. One falls into ruin, and a pool of themselves. The others break their gaze from the sky and scream in horror at the loss. He grabs the food stores and runs, leaving them to drown in that ruinous black river, cascading down the shale fall. All right, we're already into grim. I mean, this is just the road at this point. This is like the road, but cosmic. I guess we go to explore? Yeah, we go to explore. Which again, it's just 2 dice. We agreed that he was aggressive. I think at this point he's all jacked up on adrenaline. Well, that's a pretty good one. So it's a 5 and a 4. Whatever. Do I know how my... It's a 5 and a 4. I'm looking at the wrong guy here. 5 and a 4. I'm glad I'm not popular enough that people make clips, because the amount of things I do that are make me look like a moron. He said he was aggressive, so that's an 11. That's hope. Does this guy deserve hope? I don't know. But upon hope, locate and draw 2 regions on your map. You may move one to one of the new regions. All right, so now we finally get to do the region deciding. Which direction was that in? Here. Okay. So we get 2 regions when we explore, and as I understand it, we roll a d6 and we get a value based on this little chart here of what hex it goes to. And then I think we roll another one. Another 2? No, another 1? Trying to remember all this. No, it would have to be 2. We roll another 2 to get our results for the terrain. Is that correct? Let's get the location first. And if it doubles up, if the location doubles up, you add 1 until it doesn't. Or if it's an area that you simply can't put something. So I rolled a 3, which is this one. So our first one is going to go here. And then we roll again because we got hope, so it's 2. That's a 4, which would be here, but that's not an option for us. 5 is not an option either. Neither is 6, which puts us back at 1. So it'll be 1 and 3. Now, I have to remember how you pick the environment. Okay, when you explore and draw more regions, roll 2d6 for the terrain type. Okay, I was right. And a d6 for its location around you. So the first one is a 2 and a 6, so that's an 8. So it would be the woodland, which is at page 15. But I just want to mark it on the map here. It is here. And then the second one is a 2 and a 2, so a 4, which is the Untold Dregs. Because we got hope, we can move to one of these. So here's the real question then, chat. This will probably be the last location we go to. What direction do you want to go? Do you want to go to the woodland, which has the green trees here? Let me put this on the map layer. Or do you want to go to the Untold Dregs? At which point we will roll to get more information on it. I will actually say I'm enjoying this game more than I assumed I would. I don't think I've done the best job of like demonstrating what works about it. There's definitely a lot of mechanical depth to it. Dregs sounds so pleasant. Okay, that's a vote for Dregs. I think you'll know from watching this though if it's a vibe that you're into. I like two things. I like the sort of cosmic head splitting aspect of it. So like you haven't seen the monsters or anything yet, and we may not in this playthrough, but you know, I like that kind of cosmic horror aspect of it. However, what I also like though is that it's a game that's ultimately about hope, which maybe hasn't come through in this. But I think that I'm a little bored with indie tabletop RPGs being like, you are at the end of all ruin and everyone you ever loved is dead or hates you, or like you don't see them on these streams, but there's like, for everyone I play, there's like 10 about people just being depressed, frankly. And as a person who has depression, like I appreciate it, where that's coming from. It's a good like expression of it, I suppose. But also, I do not want to play a game where the guaranteed ending is misery and sorrow. I want a game that at least, even if it's unlikely, the goal is still hope. GS says, I surprisingly like this game as well. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Jumpstore also voted for the Dregs. Could be fun, could get us killed. Could get us killed indeed. Okay, we're going to the Dregs. All right, which means we need to roll 3 2d6 again to get the theme, event, and discovery. It's a 7, so corruption. Zombie Wolf says, I don't mind those games. It gives my character the chance to develop new relationships and to troll the hell out of people who don't know well enough to realize she's messing with them. 6 and a 4 is a 10 for the event. Help! Well, I think we've already established we're not a very helpful character. All right. Four and a 2 is a 6. Rotten food is our discovery. Okay, so let's... Oh, wait. This isn't the Untold... I rolled on the wrong damn thing. I'm not re-rolling. It was... That's the Sleeping Sumps. This is the Untold Dregs. My apologies. Okay. It was corruption originally. Well, now it's generosity. Well, that's quite the contrast. Sorry, guys. It's not rotten food. It was help originally. Jumpstore says, well, there's two sides to every story, so what our character counts as helping might not actually be very helpful. True. But it's not help anymore, it's inspire. This just doesn't sound like our guy. I think I had better rolls before. And the last thing was a 6, right? It was rotten food. And now a 6 is a work of art. Well, these are much harder prompts. So there will be no people here. The general description of the area is piles of trash and decaying objects from ages past lay strewn across the landscape. Columns of detritus tower into the sky as a noxious fume hangs around the spires, clinging to its many nooks and crevices. Travelers are under constant threat of trash fall from above. Jumpstore says if our character is narcissistic enough, they might believe themselves to be inspiring. So he's in a massive cosmic historical dump. So when they say work of art, it could be like the statue of David. Oof. That's a tough one. Generosity, inspire, an event. The theme is generosity. The event is inspire. And discovery is a work of art. Now, there's two things I can do here. I can sort of wait for chat, or I can dip into that side of my brain that I so rarely use in these streams, which is the very weird fever dream side of my writing experience that I do more so in my own works. Considering we're an hour and a half in, I think I'm open to ideas. I'm very curious what you guys come up with. I'm gonna go a little weird. He ran until the moon stretched. Rubble across the dying sun, and ice formed of his sweat. The air in this place was thick with rot. It was not unlike the shale hills. This was a maze of, well, detritus is a good word. Stealing their word there. rotten lettuce sliding off oil paintings. From the Renaissance. A repository of endless trash. Beautiful and foul alike. Zombie Will says he inspires, with quotes, the owners of the art so much they give him the art and he generously thanks them for their time. I feel like the subtext there is he does more stealing, but maybe that's not the point. Jumpstart says he inspires himself to get the art because it would be a generous offer of human knowledge and history to himself. Oh, I do like that. He tries to rest in a nook but while the winds sweep past him, the air still proves so chilled. He can feel his blood thicken. He eats the grain by the fistful, flecked a bit by blood now. And then continues moving into the timeless night of this crumbling eclipse. Zombie Wolf says, lol, Rory knows me so well. The only warmth he could find was in his strife. At the end, of a long, the end of a circuitous hike through the waste, he finds a figure, a perfect human form. It crouches down, offering an open hand from a raised platform of pale stone. It is a nude man. The dark, sweeping alleys. That doesn't make any sense. The dark alleys of this place obscure its details, but he steps closer. Something intriguing about the unusual form, the unusual pose of this sculpture. When he is near enough to touch. Its eyes flicker open. Brown. And bloodshot. And the stiff jaw fights. Its icy cage to speak. Jumpstore is referencing an SNL skit about the David sculpture. I don't know it. What era does it come from? Like, everyone kind of has their era of SNL. I guess not everyone. I'm sure someone in the chat is already typing about how much they hate SNL or whatever. But my era was like the late 90s to probably about 2004, 2005. If it did not occur in there, I probably haven't seen it. You can't carry it all, but I won't be forgotten. Take that hammer and break away my hand. I cannot feel it anyways. Take with you a gift of me and pray. Don't forget me entire. Don't leave all I am to the void. Apparently everyone saw it. But it had Paul Rudd in it? Oh, well. You know what really impedes my ability to look at anything modern SNL? They have these clips on YouTube, but none of them are available in Canada for some reason. So, like, I'll get people who send me, friends of mine from, you know, America and whatever, will send me clips, and then I can't watch them. Which is, I don't know who that's helping. Like, the point of putting clips up on your YouTube page, they're probably not making much money off it relative to, like, how much money SNL brings in with proper sponsors. The point of putting this stuff up on YouTube is supposed to be that you want this stuff to go viral so people will watch your show. I don't understand that. I just don't get it. But unfortunately, it means that I'm very out of touch on some of the last 10 years of stuff when they sort of locked me out of it. But I do love Paul Rudd. Anyone remember, I mean, I imagine if you're of a certain age, you know this, but Paul Rudd's gimmick when he would go on the Conan show, his various shows, that's why I sort of say it generally. Zombie Wolf says, geez, Rory, since when did Canada become the new China? Well, I mean, I think that's less to do with governmental restrictions, which is probably more what you're referencing about China, and a lot more to do with nonsense copyright BS. Who has the distribution rights here and versus other places and whatever else. Other things that are hostile to average people, but line someone's pocket. Tammy, unfortunately, is having consistent phone problems and will have to come back later. I'm sorry to hear that, Tammy. I hope it gets fixed. I hope it's not a serious issue. just something simple. But thank you for tuning in all the same. The statue shut its eyes and froze. He picked up the hammer, but did not break off the hand. His energy was sparse, was thin, was fading. And such efforts seemed pointless to him. He kept running to stave off the freeze. It's probably as far as we're going to get in this sort of poetic, bleak story. But I think that's what this game wants you to do. Also, as you said, we rolled a character who's doomed to fail, a jerk. All right. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was based on the complex prompt system of Nihilation, a post-Doomsday solo RPG by Jason Christopher Burrows, which is a solo tabletop RPG, an indie one from itch.io, which you can, I think is on sale right now. I don't believe it's free, but I think it's on sale. Anyways, I won't go back through the mechanics because they were rather, there was rather a lot of them. But the gist of the game is you're in a world that is after the Doomsday. You're the last little pockets of humanity in a world that is actively being sucked into a void of complete nothingness, and you are trying to fight to preserve memories. You don't even remember your own name, which is why you'll notice in this writing that this player has no name. It's a very important aspect of the game. On a mechanical level, as I mentioned before, it is a hex crawl, and we managed to discover a few places here. The stats and nature of your character is all randomly rolled. You don't get to choose. And so our character is a rude, overly casual, short person who has clammy skin, a sunken face, and bristly hair. And I say that because some of that comes to matter on the decisions we make in this story. Now, one thing for sure, this is the wrong music for this. Let's go. I mean, it's still kind of hopeful for what this is, but the Space Stream music is probably the better call. I pulled this out for a few stories now. His hands are sweating, sticking to his own touch. It's not warm here. The sun is a stretched stream spiraling into the black void that now fills the sky. It's cold and getting colder. The world erodes before him. He is confused. He knows his life predates his memory, but none of it comes to his thoughts. He pushes up to his feet and looks around, looks forward. His movement is sluggish. His steps are short because he finds his legs are short. His hair bounces down in his face. He shivers from the winds off the black slate valley below the ledge he is shuffling along. He can see canvas strung between crumbling breeze blocks at the floor of this crater far, far below. But a spire draws him forward, around the outer rim, and away from the settlement below. It is the remnant of a foundation still proud from the shattered shale slope around it. Atop this natural dais is a simple children's telescope, untouched by the sharp dust of the wind or the dew that collects in the dark moments when a planet passes the feathering remains of our sun before finally crumbling into the event horizon. He crawls up to it and looks through it. And in it he sees a starless sky, not the sky above, but one entirely black. He turns it towards the sun, but even then there is little light in the telescope. He checks the end of it for a cap, but it is uncapped and the lens clear. He moves its view from the sky to the land, searching a colorless void with this children's toy. He was sure this strange artifact must mean something, but he could not figure out what, though he grew impatient with even brief consideration. He decides then to spin it, leaving it to luck on where it lands, and with a strike it spins, but with it the world shifts and the ground shatters more below him, and from it a river of black negation bubbles up out of a fissure and brings with it a scream, a choir of terror. He falls from that proud rock and grips the telescope on the way down, wielding it like a club, swinging back against the oozing void from the fissure he opened. Still, something of him feels lost in this encounter, though he does stem back the river long enough to flee. He runs downhill, down the shale, down the crater walls, towards that settlement at the base of the crater. The people here are a gray and frail people. They stare up at the dimming sky, caring only enough to say a polite hello to this sweating man carrying his impromptu bludgeon. They have a crate of food. It's old grains and some sort of dried vegetables, something of the old world they uncovered. He tells them to give it to him. They do not. They pull the crate closer to their circle of sky watchers. He tells them they should run. A river of erasing tar is flowing down towards them, a truth told only for his own benefit. They nod and say a polite, "Thank you," but keep their food stores in a tight grip. So he strikes them with the remnants of that strange telescope. One falls into ruin in a pool of themselves. The others break their gaze from the sky and scream in horror at the loss. He grabs the food stores and runs, leaving them to drown in that ruinous black river cascading from the shale fall slope from the fissure he opened. He ran until the moon stretched rubble across the dying sun and ice formed of his sweat. The air in this place, this new place, was thick with rot. Unlike the shale hills, this was a maze of detritus, rotten lettuce sliding off oil paintings from the Renaissance, a towering repository of endless trash, beautiful and foul alike. He tries to rest in a nook, but while the winds sweep past him, the air still proves so chilled he can feel his blood thicken. He eats the grain by the fistful, still flecked by a bit of fresh blood, and then continues moving into the timeless night of this crumbling eclipse. The only worth he could find was in his strife. Warmth is what that should say. And at the end of this circuitous hike through the waste, he finds a figure of perfect human form. It crouches down, offering an open hand from a raised platform of pale stone. It is of a nude man, The dark alleys of this place obscure its details, but he steps closer. Something intriguing about the unusual pose of this sculpture draws him in. When he is near enough to touch, its eyes flicker open, brown and bloodshot, and the stiff jaw fights its icy flesh to speak. You can't carry me all, but I won't be forgotten. Take that hammer, break away my hand. I cannot feel it anyways. Take with you a gift of me and pray. Don't forget me entire. Don't leave all I am to this void. At least keep this hand from that. The statue shut its eyes and gave itself over to the freeze. He picked the hammer up, I should say, but did not break off the hand as requested. He saw his energy as fading, and such efforts seemed pointless to him. Instead, he kept running to stave off the freeze in himself. And there you go. That's a cheerful way to spend your evening. All right. Zombie Wolf's Random Trivia says the largest living organism is a group of identical quaking aspens spanning more than 100 acres named Pando, located in Utah, estimated to be 80,000 years old. Wow. That is wild. Witchery says, thanks for the stream and the story. It's been good to see everyone. It's good to see you, Witchery. I'm glad to see you stop by. Hope things are going okay for you. As far as me, well, I enjoyed the game. You'll know if this game is for you. I think the game functions. I think that at times it becomes a little confusing as to what to do, but you do figure it out. I will just briefly show people how, because if you're committed this long, you're obviously interested in the game, a little bit about how the combat works. So when you make an oppose action, which isn't necessarily an attack, it's just something to counter it. Like always, you roll to succeed. You roll 2d6s, and then the same range of despair, gloom, and hope applies to that action. If you get hope, for example, you can fill one of these little bubbles that are, and I'll show you a monster sheet. One of these little bubbles. So you see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bubbles around something. So let's say you rolled hope, which gives you 2. You'll fill in 2. Okay, and those will stay filled in forever now. Except where there's a couple of exceptions to that, but for the most part. You then roll a threat roll, which is just a d6. And if that value is above any of the circles you filled in with your attack action, then whatever the effect of this thing is happens. Usually increases your entropy. However, if it lands on one of the ones you colored in, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circles around it, then the threat doesn't occur. Then you fight it off for that turn. At any point, you can run away from a fight using the evade action, or you can stick it out and try to defeat them, and there are benefits to defeating things in this game. This little drop you see means that that once you defeat all 6 of the things around that drop, it's dead. But there's also later ones where you see a little shield symbol, and that means you have to defeat that before. You also will have enemies that have multiple abilities, and you can choose to basically destroy that ability. Whatever ability you're attacking is if you fail, the one that the effect you will have. Anyways, that is just for those who might have wanted a little bit of a description, because I spent a very long time trying to figure all of that out. But the gist of it is you roll a d6 twice if you succeed. You roll a d6 once, rather, after you succeed at the attack action. And if that value is above the value that you got from the attack action, then you take some sort of damage or negative effect. Zombie Wolf said, I had a fun time. It was a very niche game, but not entirely a bummer. Thanks for Rory for doing something a little different tonight. Night, everyone. Hope to see you Tuesday. I agree. I think that's how I feel about it as well. I think you know if this game is for you. If it's a concept that interests you, if you like that kind of heavy mechanics to aid with immersion, I think you'll enjoy it. If not, it's probably not for you. Jumpstore says, thanks for the breakdown. I like to leave with a bit more of an understanding of these games. I appreciate that. I realize that some people probably do watch it for that. I don't think I'm the best person to explain rules, but I think at least I can offer my own observations that might kickstart you a bit in understanding the game for yourself if you choose to play it. I do think this is an interesting game. There's lots of interesting stuff that we didn't touch on, keepsakes and memories and special actions and whatever else, but I kind of don't usually get to that stuff in these games. This is one I would consider revisiting. Probably not for a little while. If there's another one you think I should consider revisiting, let me know in the chat. Even after I go dark, I will still be looking at the chat. Or let me know in the comments down below. If there's something I did and you're like, I want to see more of that story, let me know. Because, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of stuff that I can keep playing, but I can always go back and try some stuff like we do with Fox Curio's Floating Book Shop. Anyways, thank you very much, Jumpstore, Zombie Wolf, GS Witchery, Tammy, I hope your phone works out. Uncle Kitty and Janera, if you're out there, I hope, Janera, your work's going well. Well, Uncle Kitty, I hope your work's going well as well. I liked your recommendations on last week's video. And everybody out there lurking, as always, feel free to lurk. We're all introverts really here. That's who's playing a solo RPG but introverts. I appreciate you. I hope you have a good night. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.